All right. Hope everyone's doing great here. Glad to see everyone that's been able to join us. I'm really excited about today's session. I think we've got a really timely one for all of us. So I'll get us kicked off here. Welcome to Smartling's AI 101 webinar series. In this session, we're going to be talking with industry pro and fellow Smartling, Gavin Grimes. Our topic for today is how to ask for and keep your budget. I think this session is particularly timely with localization departments under increasing pressure to do more with less and implement AI solutions to improve efficiency. Joining me today is Gavin Grimes, our VP of Language Services, and we're going to talk through real-world strategies teams are using to build and defend their localization budgets in an AI-driven world. Whether you're looking to make the case for a new AI tool, protect existing spend, or expand your program scope, this conversation will equip you with practical tactics and proven messaging to help you win budget discussions. Gavin, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brian. Hey, everyone. Great to be here.
Let's start with a little background on Gavin. Gavin is a Dublin-based localization executive with 25 years of experience. He blends deep operational experience with tech-first approach at scale. He has senior engineering and product roles at IBM and AOL and spent over 13 years at WeLocalize, including 6 years as general manager of WeLocalize China, leading a team of over 600. Gavin ultimately served as vice president of GM of Europe with a full P&L responsibility. Gavin joined Smartling in 2020 as part of our executive team and leads our language services teams, aligning service delivery with Smartling's AI-powered platform. In his spare time, he likes all things motorized on 2 wheels and growing things in his garden with his 2 kids. As a reminder, feel free to drop any questions into the chat throughout today's session, and we'll also send a copy of the recording later today. So let's start with question number 1. Gavin, let's start with the big picture. How have budget conversations changed over the last few years, especially now that AI is part of the localization conversation?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So maybe like a few years ago, localization budget conversations were mostly about cost containment, capacity, words translated and how quickly, and the per word rates. And it was a very linear conversation. I think today it's shifted. Like AI is now mainstream, and executives expect probably 2 things simultaneously. They still expect the efficiency gains, like faster turnaround, lower unit cost, but also, and more importantly, what they're looking for at C-level is like proof of value. And what I mean by that is clear impact on growth, customer engagement, or maybe risk mitigation. Like executives, C-level, and Brian himself, they're all using ChatGPT. So like CFOs and CEOs are walking into meeting rooms and saying, hey, this email took me 2 seconds to draft. It used to take me a half an hour to draft. Why can't we cut localization spend in X, Y, and Z? And that's a huge mindset shift. What's changed most is the budget conversation no longer just is a matter of translation cost. There's now tied strategic questions to that budget conversations, like how does AI fit into the enterprise technology roadmap, or what are the governance risks, or how will we prove ROI in say 90 days instead of 3 years? So I guess the localization leader's job is to frame AI as what we're calling a controlled accelerator, not just like a blunt tool to cut cost. And that means bringing evidence of reduced cycle time, quality metrics, business outcomes to the higher up. So yes, Brian, they have changed and they will continue to change as AI evolves.
Yeah, I think that's really important for this audience to understand. I think about it all the time as the CEO of Smartling. I'm looking for each department to be bringing up AI initiatives that help improve faster go-to-market or more efficiency. And I think that as we've seen, translation and localization is a tremendous space in which those can be applied. So Gavin, I think a lot about, it's always easy to talk about things that go well, but you've got a lot of experience to share. I'm not implying that you've made a lot of mistakes, but listen, mistakes are part of learning. What are some of the mistakes that you've made in the past when you've asked for budget?
Yeah, and indeed, I have made a lot of mistakes, and I have no shame in saying that. It's how you learn. And as young, maybe naive managers or leaders on that starting out on that journey, it's inevitable you're going to make some mistakes when you're talking to C-level or even board for budget. And I was thinking about last night about this, and there was three main things that I kind of tripped myself up on. And first one was going into these meetings without having a baseline, not understanding where your business was today and asking for maybe budget for headcount or for tools to improve, but to improve on what? CFO is just going to bat that away straight away. Asking in isolation was another one that I kind of tripped up on. So asking for the needs of your current team rather than understanding what the goals of the company was and not aligning the needs of your team with the company goals. So again, another kind of learning for me. But the one that kind of stood out when I was thinking about this was I was based, as Bryan alluded to in the bio, I was based in China for 6 or 7 years, and I ran a Chinese operation there. And we wanted to expand into a new city, expand the China operation. So I spent a lot of time putting together this huge glossy deck. I was so proud of it. It looked amazing. It had all language services diagrams and internal team metrics and stuff. And then I made the big mistake of presenting that in the same meeting to the CFO, to the CMO, and to the CEO at the time. A disaster, a complete disaster. The CFO straight away said, what's the payback period? CMO said, how does this improve our global brand? The CEO wanted to know, what's the competitive advantage by doing this? And the fundamental mistake I made was when I was putting this, 40 slide deck together, I completely missed the mark by treating them as one audience, and they're very much not one audience. I built the deck for myself and for the team. So the next time, through talking to mentors and getting feedback, I created 3 very succinct 1-2-pager documents, C-level, like short, digestible, data-driven documents. The one for the CFO had like the ROI on the investment. The one for the CEO had the market differentiation and how we had the competitive advantage by doing this. And the one for the CMO had, brand speed. And it was the same ask, the same expansion, different framing, and a very different outcome. It ultimately got approved, but it delayed the process by a matter of months. And I've been on both sides. I've been on like trying to sell budgets to clients and then asking for budgets internal and LSPs. And those 3 things I alluded to: no baseline, asking in isolation, and ignoring the audience. The win comes when you flip those. Clear data, alignment with company strategy, and maybe like tailored storytelling depending on the audience. So I think there are 3 common mistakes that managers make when asking for budget, Bryan.
Yeah, that's such great advice, Gavin. I've been there too. And people are, when you're making the presentation, you're the subject matter expert. 10x more, especially from a leadership team perspective, will know about your topic. And I think that keeping those to 2, maybe 3 pages tops, maybe even 1, is really key. It's basically, hey, here's the outcome we expect. Here's the ROI on it, and here's the timing. Really, and the executive then will, if they've got further questions, they'll ask. But if you throw a 40-page deck at them, they're just, I always get very frustrated when I see those things, because they're just, you just know they're not going to go well. So I think that's really great advice. So when we think about a lot of localization teams still struggle with being seen as a cost center. What's your advice for reframing translation spend as a business investment and actually getting buy-in from finance?
Yeah, this is a tough one, and localization teams need to get it right. The trap is being seen as a cost center, invoices for words translated or whatever it is. The key is to reframe this like as an investment in revenue growth, excuse me, or risk mitigation. And there's lots of ways of doing that, but some that kind of come to mind is, tying it to revenue mechanics. Instead of like going in quoting 15 cents for German, maybe say localizing our German marketing assets drives I don't know, 1 million incremental revenue at a 3% conversion rate or something along those lines. Suddenly finance see the link or the linkage to revenue, and they sit up and pay attention to that. Showing buyer behavior is another one. I think we've all read the research, and it consistently says that over 75% of customers prefer products in their own language, and 40 won't buy otherwise. And that stat kind of reframes translation organically as table stakes for revenue, not just an optional cost. The next one, like I was thinking about, was something that has been quite successful for Smartling in conversations with clients, is something we call the translation mix. Some people refer to it as portfolio approach. And that is essentially segmenting the content into tiers. So you'll have a tier 1, high touch, high vis, maybe a human translation, or as we call AIHT workflow is suitable for that. It's higher cost, but it's higher quality. And maybe a tier 2 would be, something, a workflow for efficiency, MTPE, or what we call AIT. And then tier 3 maybe is your MT for your long tail. Finance loves this because it shows that you have incorporate a level of discipline, and you're not overspending where you don't need to overspend. And it's easy to do doing, content analysis and, assigning the right workflow to the right content type. And then risk mitigation. I know risk mitigation is important for all verticals, but where I see it more often than not is when talking to regulated industries and companies in regulated industries, showing how the localization prevents fines, for example, or miscoms or customer churn. And again, risk avoidance has a real financial weight behind it. I talked to a SaaS company last week or the week before, and they had reframed their whole localization budget by demonstrating that localizing just the onboarding emails cut early churn in their Spanish market by 25%. And that in itself is really, really powerful. And that line item, that's something CFOs really, really understand, Bryan.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think that's great. I think that's really important for localization teams to partner either with their marketing departments or their finance departments, because they all, marketing departments are quite good typically at, if you don't have those sort of like business outcome metrics, someone in your organization does, right? So we can say, you can improve conversion rate, you can improve engagement. Let's say that you're trying to expand into Germany over the next 12 months. Understanding how what's the targets there, what's the goal, by how much, right? And then attributing that to conversion uplift or engagement are things that your finance and marketing team can probably help you. And this example of churn reduction is massively important to SaaS companies today, and that makes total sense to me. So I think that's super super helpful. I kind of even following on that a little bit. I think that one of the things I would advocate for not only localization teams but all other teams is in this period of like, let me take a step back. All CEOs and boards are being, so you're being pressured because the CEO is being pressured to implement AI and show progress. So I would recommend going on the offensive, and I think maybe sometimes localization teams are a little reticent to do that. But I would suggest to be proactive and show leadership how you are being proactive in terms of being able to translate more content, with same budget or improving budget or improving go-to-market capabilities, right? Even better, right? We talked about growth, churn reduction, those kinds of things. Talking in that way in this period of time is super important. And I would not wait in this environment. I'll give you, I've had some examples of even people internally coming to me and saying, hey, listen, as an individual contributor, or I've got this idea. And I tell you, I'm super excited about those people coming forward and offering those suggestions. That's what, it might feel a little scary, but I'm telling you, that's what leadership looks like, especially when you package it up in a really effective way.
Yeah.
So Gavin, when it comes to justifying spend, so speaking of translation, when it comes to justifying spend on AI translation tools and platforms, what kinds of numbers or outcomes resonate the most with executives, and how can teams start tracking and presenting those metrics?
Yeah, that's a really, really timely question as well. I mean, when you're asking for budget, for AI-enabled tools, and not just AI-enabled tools and platforms. Executives don't really care about, hey, cool cat tool features and stuff like that. They care about numbers tied to outcomes, and some of those numbers resonates a little highly than others. So cycle time reduction is very, very important at the moment. And for example, that would be we cut average turnaround time from 5 days to 1 day, enabling. And why is that important, 5 days to 1 day? Because you could potentially enable like something like a simultaneous global launch. So the English and the localized versions launch together. And speed to market is early revenue recognition. What CFO doesn't love that? Revenue impact. So show conversion lifts, attach rates, or churn reduction in the localized markets. An example of that would be, say after localizing, I don't know, Japanese self-service help with MTPE, support tickets dropped by 25%. And that has a tangible dollar value attached to it. Maybe it's 400K. Again, CEOs and CFOs like those numbers. They can see a business impact. Cost avoidance, of course, as well. I think we've probably all been burnt by, rework. So investing upstream it does avoid larger future spends on things like rework or missed launches, or the ability to run smaller support teams. And then the quality at scale, and quality, I think you do need to show that AI assisted output still passes brand and regulatory thresholds and is the same as traditional workflows. But I don't think you need to do that on a repetitive basis. I think that's, quality should be a given. Higher ups just kind of expect a certain quality level that they're paying for it. And then productivity. Obviously compared to human only, AI powered has improved dramatically. The key to kind of harnessing all of that is how you're tracking it and how you're reporting it and the cadence you're reporting it. So, some of the successful companies that we're working with have done that. They've instrumented the translation workflow with metadata, and there's, all the data they need around turnaround time, costs, HR are in that, but they've coupled that, or they've connected that to their web analytics in their marketing department. So bounce rates, conversions, NPSs, and then they roll them into a one pager, like the dashboard, and they're showing like a CFO friendly metrics once a month on dollar saved, on revenue that the localized content enabled, and then the faster cycles. So all of that is really, really powerful stuff.
Yeah, agreed. Totally agreed. We've heard a lot about this lately. Leadership assumes AI means that you can do the same work for half the budget. How should localization teams respond when their budget is on the chopping block?
Yeah, it's again, all the easy questions today. I think the right response is to shift the conversation from cost elimination to something maybe called like value redistribution, what we're referencing it to. And what I mean by that is, these are some of the things to think about when you're kind of reframing from cost elimination into value redistribution. Differentiate content types. So not all content is equal. So then you have your critical revenue driving content, your product pages, the high vis stuff, and cutting here is kind of risky and could potentially have compliance penalties or lost sales. But then you have a utility or long tail content like support, FAQs, or internal docs. And this is where currently AI is safely driving big savings. So show leadership that you've kind of thought about the segmentation, and that builds trust. And then you can shift the percentage in that kind of second bucket into the first bucket over time as you build trust. Repositioning like more with the same rather than the same with less. Instead of having kind of a budget, frame it as like, with the same budget, AI lets us double our impact. And like some examples of that would be, hey, we can cover 20 languages now instead of 10 for the same price. We can expand into those long tail content that we've previously been sitting on because we couldn't afford to do or ignored. Release faster in parallel with product launches. And this kind of references the efficiency win into that whole growth story. Quantify revenue as a risk. I mean, cutting budget sounds fine until it's attached to a revenue number. An example of that being maybe you stop localizing Spanish PDPs, for example, and you put a whole bunch of revenue at risk because 40% of Spanish consumers won't buy in English, as we said earlier on. So suddenly cutting the budget feels a little reckless. So you need to be very, very careful where you're looking at budget cuts. Sorry, I think there was a bit of background there. I'll keep going. So, and then again, a mistake like a new leader or manager can make is offering too much too soon. So like offer a kind of a stage gated saving plan, agree to like efficiency targets, but maybe on your term or on your team's term. For example, we'll reduce the word rate by 25% on FAQ, for example, or product manuals. And we're going to reinvest that into launching the 2 markets that we've been talking about for the last 6 months. And this shows you're embracing AI responsibly, but still protecting the business outcomes. And then like highlight risk and governance, brand risk. AI without human oversight can cause brand damage in certain content types, in certain verticals. So it's a difficult conversation to have, but to the initial point earlier on, come with data and come with well thought out ideas that are linked to the business outcomes that your CEO or executive team are trying to achieve. I guess, Bryan, is the point there.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. I think about it this way. I know that in conversations with our customers that most of them they're ration content because of cost, right? There's more content that they'd like to translate or to localize, but just they don't have the budget to do it. So AI is a tool that you can use to expand, right? So instead of 10 languages, you go into 20. We're expanding into new markets, or we can, now we can localize our help center content, our technical documentation, all of these things that customers have been asking for, but you weren't able to do before. We've had that experience many times. I think that's a great solution. Be doing more with the same than more the same with less. And I also really like this idea of quantifying revenue at risk. CEOs hate the idea of revenue being put at risk, right? So, okay, great, we saved $100,000 to put 12 million at risk. That doesn't seem like a very good trade-off to me as a CEO. So I think that a combination of those 2 tactics I think can be quite effective. So what do you think about it? If you're planning next year's budget, 2026, and AI is going to be part of your strategy, how should you approach that? What are smart teams doing to give themselves flexibility?
Yeah. So some of the more sophisticated, successful teams, they aren't treating AI as a line item. They're kind of baking it into their operating model, and that means structuring their budget. So AI becomes like a lever for savings and a lever for growth, both simultaneously. Some are like separating their budget into 2 elements, like the day-to-day, which covers the predictable spend, core languages, ongoing translations, the QA stuff. And some are kind of, part of that would be an experimental budget, so call it 80-20, and allocating maybe 20% for AI pilots, workflow redesign, training data, cleanup and tooling. And finance responds well when you show you've ring-fenced the risk and you won't gamble the whole budget, but you're showing the initiative and you're showing the ambition to adopt AI over time. The next part of this that is really, really important, and I've seen like companies really benefit from this, is budget for enablers for AI, not just the platform or the tool, whatever it might be. And the real value comes from like things like term-based and translation memory cleanup, or style guide and prompt library creation, quality evaluation, harnessing that, training post editors and reviewers to work effectively with AI prompts. And without those, AI won't deliver the ROI you promise. And I think people sometimes gloss over that, and that's really core fundamentals to success of getting the success you want from AI programs. Some companies, I've seen this not often, but some companies are building kind of a flexibility with burst clauses that they're calling. So smart contracts with LSPs and vendors now include like elasticity clauses. So if content spikes, which it will, you can scale without emergency purchase orders. That's especially important with AI because like content velocity over will increase over, once automation takes hold. And then tying AI to corporate OKRs is absolutely key. So instead of saying, hey, we need 100K for AI tools, tie the request directly to what the leadership priorities are. So example, maybe the CFO priority would be lower cost to serve. So show cost per release timeline. Maybe a CMO priority would be faster global campaign rollout, so show cycle time gains. And then the CEO priority might be faster entry into 2 markets, so show the capacity freed up by using AI to enable the team to fund that. So when AI is positioned as an enabler to these goals, it does seem to get funded. So the smartest teams aren't betting the house on AI. They're splitting their budget into 2 parts: a stable run and maybe a flexible piece for the AI.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. I think this has been amazing, Gavin. I really appreciate you spending the time with us today and really talking through all the experiences that you've had in this industry, and part of budgeting and helping customers figure out how to do that. I just keep coming back to this. I know that I see this all the time. It's tough when you're when you're in a function like translation localization. Sometimes you don't feel super confident or comfortable around. I see varying levels of comfort around being able to communicate, outcomes and ROI and all of that. And we're here to help too. If you've ever got any specific questions on that, we'd love to help you. We see it all the time, and trying to help customers. But that's probably the number one thing. I know that everyone's under a lot of pressure right now, so we thought this would be a really timely conversation to have out there and help our customers think about what sort of ways they can, make sure that their budget doesn't get negatively impacted in such an important function like translation localization. We got a couple minutes left here. Let's see if we got some questions coming in here before we go. And as a reminder, we will be distributing these questions, or this webinar out over the next. Or I think we're going to send it out this afternoon. So let's see if we've got any questions here. I've got one I can see. Okay, from Javier. In situations where leadership is aggressively pushing for fast AI adoption, how can teams avoid becoming reactive and plugging in tools just to show progress and instead stay strategic, solving real business problems? We'll start with that. Gavin, do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to having a very clear roadmap ahead of what you want, what you're trying to achieve, and how it maps to the company's business goals. I think it's your job within the localization team to first of all acknowledge that you do need to embrace what's happening. I have talked to some localization teams who may not have been as early adopters to what's out there as they should have been, and then the decisions are being taken away from them, and that's not a place you want to get into. So I think you first of all analyze the needs, and then you really align it to the company goals. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, I would agree. My advice would be, listen, if you don't have an AI strategy right now, you're probably behind. You are behind the ball, right? And you better have it. So just to be perfectly direct, I sound like I'm talking to my own team right now. Sorry.
Yeah, I can vouch for that.
If you don't want to be reactionary, you need to be proactive. And I think that's what I was kind of mentioning at the top of the hour here, is like be aggressive, be proactive here, because if it hasn't come your way, trust me, it's coming your way. And then the second part of that question is, how critical is access to the right data, knowing how to interpret it, and pushing back or guiding those conversations with leadership?
I think it's integral. I think it's absolutely integral. And even if I look at my own team, there is one full-time person looking at data from a operational perspective and from a customer perspective as well. And without that person, we wouldn't be able to make the decisions or the right decisions we do in such a timely manner. So if your team allows it and you have the capacity, I would certainly look at having that function within your team. It doesn't need to be a full-time resource, but certainly a part-time resource. And I mean, curiosity is a big, huge plus to have in team members at the moment. People need to be curious of what's happening and self-learning as well. What we've done for the last number of years is not going to get us to where we need to get to in the future. So yeah, integral in a word.
Yeah, I agree. Somebody in the organization has that data. I think many times it's our jobs to go look for it and get it,
Yeah.
because if it matters, someone's capturing the data. Anyways, looking forward to our next session where we'll cover the hot topic of today: do it yourself or do it for me, AI. We're going to be meeting with Nimsy. Thank you so much, and hope you see you on September 30th.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Bryan.